Okay, apologies for being late. I was on another laptop, but I was waiting for it to start, so I've set up this other one. So apologies again for that. So I'm Martin Murphy. I've got some social platforms on here. You're welcome to link up with me if you'd like to continue the discussion afterwards. Make a note of the email address because there's a gift at the end for those who would like to understand and work with the tools we've designed to help teams operate more effectively. So what we're going to look at today is the characteristics of elite teams, the benefits for a business to develop an elite team culture, leading elite teams, and some power tools we've created to increase clarity, performance, communication, innovation, and so on. And at the end, we'll have some questions. And so we were going to have, hold on, let me just get past this one. We were going to have some a little video there, but it was thought it would be too difficult about who we are. But basically, we're from our background is in the military, specifically special forces. I then went on to do set up special project teams around the world. So I've worked with small, high-performing teams that are autonomous, creative, and tend to be rather enterprising. Archimedes, the mathematician, said, give me a lever long enough and I can move the world. And elite teams are a lever for unleashing peak performance, and this will, of course, translate into profits. As I said, my experience with elite teams began in the special forces, and with Metris Leadership have designed their own ethos, tools, and models to help entrepreneurs and leaders create and lead their own elite teams. So, some other examples of elite teams you'd find at Google X Lab, possibly Formula One pit teams, the All Blacks rugby team, and Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works. They were an early example of what elite teams can achieve. So, with its strapline being innovation with purpose, Skunk Works started in 1943 when Kelly Johnson was given permission to create an experimental engineering department to begin work on the secret XP-80 shooting star jet fighter. Johnson and his team designed and built the XP-80 in only 143 days. That was 7 days than was required, and it was this project that marked the birth of what would become the Skunk Works. So what allowed Johnson to operate the Skunk Works so effectively and efficiently was his unconventional organisational approach. He kind of broke the rules, challenging the current bureaucratic system that stifles innovation and hinders progress. His philosophy is spelled out in his 14 rules and practices that are still in practice today, such as use a small number of good people, 10 to 25% compared to the so-called normal systems. As you can see from the slide, teams work best as small empowered units with streamlined processes and a culture of experimentation. In today's world, we're seeing the impact of technological advancement. So elite teams can achieve so much more with less. We don't need as big a teams because, as Gallup found, smaller companies have more engaged employees. In fact, 42% of employees working at companies of 10 or fewer were more engaged at work versus only 30% of employees in larger companies. The beauty is that you can always bring small units together to work on a big project and allow them to go back to their small units after the project is completed. So really you have the best of both worlds. So the elite team concepts, the characteristics of elite teams. The first one being excellence. Elite teams are always on the path of excellence with immediate feedback and practice. They're able to feedback and practice what they're doing. So they're on this path of excellence, and they're liberated from the control conform mentality that you often associate with hierarchical organizations. This means that each member of the team can lead on projects. They may not be natural leaders, but they have that ability. Elite teams tend to be very interdependent. They're deeply connected and collaborative, and it feels like you're part of the community. This increases psychological safety. Training and tools. Normally as groups expand, they're taught job skills, but training to be part of a cohesive, productive team and having the tools which will help them achieve that are essential if you don't want to suffer the effects with big group resistance. Elite teams are always evolving, like everything else in life. Elite teams evolve and so are capable of experimentation, adaptation, and self-learning. And this, as a result, makes them agile, creative, and enterprising, which in the chaotic and opportunistic 21st century are a requisite factor for success. The elite team as a whole is greater than the sum of its parts, as they're more mindful, have an integral perspective, and experience peak performance flow states more often. So what's the ideal size of a team? According to Amazon's Jeff Bezos, it's the number of people that two pizzas will feed over a lunchtime strategy session. I guess that he means about 8 people, but of course it could depend on how hungry the team is. Sir John Whitmore developed this formula, which is performance is equal to your potential minus interference. One of the most recognised obstacles to performing successful large teams is the idea that the more people there are, the more people there will be to talk to, and talking takes time, which of course reduces efficiency. If you look at the lines of communication in a team, you see at 3 people there's only 3 lines, but by 6 people it's already become 15 lines, kind of making it very chaotic. And of course, by the time you get to 14 people, it's become an astonishing 91 lines of communication. So that's a lot of potential for interference, and the potential also for miscommunication grows significantly. It forces people to create smaller unofficial groups, as the human brains, it's believed, can only really handle about 7 plus or minus 3 bits of information at any one time. An app company called Flow ran its own research on the data it received from clients, and it found that the optimum team size by task completed per month was 6, and after that, performance individually leveled off. So when it comes to organisational design, it's a good idea to follow nature. Keep it sublimely simple, I say. Nature tends to follow this fractal design. It's a simple design repeated over and over, so it's easy to understand. And of course, keeping them as small teams like this, you can understand the capacity of each team. So that means that your customer service is better. Basically, you're not overstretching yourself. So the characteristics of elite teams. So as we said, the elite teams boost performance. These characteristics boost performance of the team. This includes an egalitarian environment, which provides a psychological safety for people to put forward ideas. Peak performance flow states are triggered by clear goals and immediate feedback. What's notable here is the feedback is not used as a management tool to discipline the performer, but a performance enhancing tool to be used by the performer themselves. They can see their own performance and get clear immediate feedback. It's really important that. Deep connections are formed, and this helps trigger creativity and confidence. Having a close friend at work is said to equal around 100,000 in terms of monetary value, according to research by Harvard Business Review. And so having deep relationships, stronger connections, team cohesion, you have less staff turnover, which of course reduces costs. Everyone's really clear about what's expected of them. As a result, there's a relaxed atmosphere again, which boosts psychological safety. Some other characteristics include the team are focused on collective results. Disagreement is viewed as constructive and healthy. A team that always agrees is not actually a good sign, as it could be that people are too afraid to speak up because they're in a hierarchical system that can lead to punishment of some sort. Flight teams in Japan suffered from this a lot, as subordinates would often refuse to question the captain. And the problem with this is that they remain quiet as they knew that their plane was going to hit a mountain. So flight teams in Japan realised that they had to change their culture to prevent this problem happening again. So You can see why it's a good idea that sometimes disagreements are, and different viewpoints are really important. As elite teams have an influence in the planning stage, they feel a sense of ownership of the project. So they commit to decisions and any plans that are made because of, as I said, they feel this sense of ownership. Leadership in elite teams is more seen as a behaviour as opposed to a position. When a title is bestowed on someone, you are the leader, you are the manager, this often leads us to a sense of entitlement. And also defensive behaviours because they're trying to secure the position. It becomes about the title and not the actual work that they're doing. So yeah, the elite teams, leadership is very much a behaviour, and it can also be shared. People are engaged in projects from the very beginning. Everyone's got a say, as such, more people could take on the leadership role in the elite teams should they have to. The All Black coach of 1987 said that teams such as these are extremely rare. They are tough to find and even tougher to build, but they do exist. They can be built and they can be led. So although they're not commonplace yet, I believe they'll play a bigger part in the future. It'll be the kind of next competitive advantage. And of course, research of elite teams increased benefits include increased performance, better communication, higher morale. And of course, happy teams create happy customers. Recent research from Warwick University suggested that increased happiness levels in the team led to a 12% increase in performance. So happiness is a good thing, shall we say. The other thing about this is, as Jennifer Muller, a professor at San Diego School of Business Administration, observed, one of the fundamental benefits is that teams like this require less managing and overseeing. So that leaves the leader or the entrepreneur able to get on with other things, high strategy and high leverage activities. The makeup of different types of teams are really result of the increasing alignment and commitment to common goals and purpose that they have. So work groups interact mainly to share information and best practices and make decisions, basically. There are no common purpose or performance goals that require mutual accountability. So the purpose of this group is only to specify the role of its members and to delegate tasks work. Members of pseudo teams don't want to take the risks necessary to become a real team. They're not interested in becoming a real team. They're not interested in creating a common purpose or setting performance goals as such. The pseudo team resides at the bottom of the performance curve, as you can see, and is the weakest of the 5 levels. The real team consists of a small group of people who share a common purpose, goals, and an approach to work. The members have complementary skills and they hold themselves mutually accountable for their results. The performance impact and results of the real team are much greater than the previous 2 groups. And moving from real teams to a high performance team requires a very strong commitment to improve performance. And then elite teams are able to think strategically as well for the organisation, making decisions which can direct the organisation from the ground upwards. They lead themselves at this point, and a full kind of psychological individuation from so-called bosses has occurred, enabling the entrepreneurial leader to focus on high leverage and strategic behaviours. So really, you've got people on the coalface that can see opportunities, and then they will make a decision, and I'll show you how they're able to make a decision which is logical with the rest of the organisation later on. But that's the big differentiator from high performance teams. Benefits for the team are that they achieve more flow states. Flow states are rewarding in themselves. You get a feel-good factor when you're doing work in this kind of flow peak performance zone. And also it fulfills emotional needs such as confidence in your own ability. There's strong relationships, and if they're not good friends, then at least they have complete trust in other members of the team. And significance, there's a certain amount of status from doing something meaningful. They're self-directing, you've got freedom to operate, and as I said, there's that sense of meaning involved in elite teams. So the second half of this will kind of sort of cover what it means to lead an elite team. Leaders have to overcome what I call the leader wall. This means, for an entrepreneur, using a different kind of energy and resource. Marathon runners hit what they call the wall. It's nicknamed the wall. When they've depleted their glycogen stores and the body has to shift to a psychologically, emotionally, and physically different way of operating to continue. And it's kind of the same for an entrepreneur in a growing business, for example. As the organization develops, they have to adapt to new behaviors to be able to reach the full potential of the growing team, to increase engagement and attract the right kind of people to the mission. You kind of have to delegate effectively and also learn how to engage the team. So to do that, the leader has to overcome the internal resistance of learning new behaviors and adapting to these kind of changing paradigms. So Sun Tzu said, know yourself and know the enemy and need not fear the results of 100 battles. But of course, the enemy can sometimes be the shadow side of our personality. So leaders need to become more self-aware. Personality is a good place to start. I tend to think of it in terms of 4 intelligences. People have a behavioral intelligence. I refer to as the driving personality here, the driver. They're assertive and task-focused. Developers use cognitive intelligence, and they tend to be analytical and detail-focused. They don't like to be rushed in their work. The facilitators are the people-focused and accommodating type. They're more empathic. They're the glue that holds the team together, if you like, and they're very accommodating. And the champions are the amiable and opportunity-focused people, often spinning several plates, and they're very enthusiastic communicators. So your Richard Branson's of the world will come into that one. By learning more about themselves, it helps leaders to understand more about others, they'll, as we can see from this, people have good days and bad days. On a good day, the drivers are demanding and competitive, task-focused. The facilitators here are caring and patient, relaxed. They're opposite type, if you like. And the developers are cautious, exacting, conservative, tend to be quite reliable. The champions are sociable and creative and very expressive and have this affirmative, positive communication, and are enthusiastic about projects, so they get everything revved up. But in personality, we also talk about overplayed strengths. So when things aren't working out too well, it's a good idea for leaders to understand and be able to recognize their own dark side. As I said, we talk about overplayed strengths. So driving, the intolerant, and the champions become brash and careless. The facilitators can stick their heels in, and developers can be reserved and indecisive and want more information as you push them. So it's also an important thing to understand what your biases are. So drivers tend to be overconfident. Yellow champions can suffer from groupthink and get too enthusiastic about ideas. Facilitators can suffer from inertia, and developers can suffer, look at pattern recognition, always trying to see the patterns that have gone on before. So having an awareness of your bias is crucial for decision making, as is having a holistic or integral viewpoint. So being aware of yourself and others and the environment is very beneficial. As McKinsey observed, 89% of effective leaders have 4 traits or abilities, which means they are very, very adaptable and situationally aware. Effective leaders are results focused, they're good at problem solving, are supportive, and they value and look for other people's input and perspectives. So as you can see, there's this integral thing where leaders have to not only understand who they are, but be able to move around and have this integral viewpoint. Interesting observation is that all human systems move through a life cycle, be it relationships, ideas, or business. And so this is actually a reflection of the human condition itself. We humans start life as a codependent relationship with our caregivers. We then move to the counter-dependent stage where we learn the rules of our tribe. If we don't suffer from any kind of arrested childhood development, we'll grow and develop healthy interdependent relationships. And then this allows us the confidence to develop ability to be independent in thoughts and actions. And we see this in life, in businesses, in organizations. They start off competing for their place in the world. If they're successful, they put in systems and processes, they rigitize people, and this makes success more certain in the conforming stage. And it's a bit like a climber. In the beginning, there's a lot of exposure to risk. So when the climber has achieved some measure of success, he or she will put some device into the rock face to secure their success at that point. A lot of organizations get stuck at this stage in a kind of arrested development, as I mentioned earlier, because the human ego is only scared of two things: not getting what it wants, which drives the entrepreneur, and when it's got it, losing it, which motivates the manager to achieve certainty. So often leaders stay stuck at this stage, conforming stage, because they're scared of making life more uncertain by moving to the collaborative stage, which of course is where power is transferred to the team. And then of course the team can contribute creatively to the future success of the organization. To lead teams and leverage more of the potential of your team requires leaders overcoming the common myth that people can't manage themselves, that they're demotivated, and that they're unable to follow a strategy. We know from people who indulge in outdoor pursuits, in these risky things, that they're capable of doing all this themselves if they're motivated enough. So in the 21st century, people want more autonomy and opportunity to develop professionally and personally, and the workplace should be a platform for this to happen. An effective leader should evolve into the inspirational leader role, where a purpose and vision is enough to engage a team who can then make it happen. As Saint Exupery advises, don't tell a team how to build a ship, tell them how wonderful the sea is, then stand out of the way and let them get on with it. In order for both the child and the parent to achieve their full potential, they must individuate psychologically, as well as, and become two separate systems. And it's the same with an effective leader. An effective leader should emulate the effective parent and continually ask, who's got the power in this situation? If it's the leader who's continually stepping in and firefighting, then there's still work to do to empower the team to think for themselves and learn for themselves. So when we look at this life cycle in terms of development of a leader, slightly through the entrepreneur, you can see there's a gradual transference of power and a changing role for the leader. Moving from the entrepreneur, where he just motivates the people, the very small team that's within, we could win this if we dare to risk. He then turns into the more directing role as a manager, where he sort of says, this is how, telling other new people, new arrivals, this is how we're going to do it. This is, adding more certainty, widgetizing people, as I call it, which is a necessary part of it. So you can't miss out any of these parts. And then there's the moving from manager to coach, and in between is this mentoring level, where mentoring stage, where you've got one foot in the past. When you're talking to your team, you'll say, well, this is how we did it in the past. Have you got any ideas of your own? So that's the mentoring stage. And then the empowering level is basically, okay, how are you going to do this? This is the vision of where we're going moving forward. And then when you get to the inspirational leader stage, you can understand the situation you're in, what's necessary where, and obviously when new people come in, you're going to motivate them, then direct them, then use a mentoring thing as you gradually give them more and more power. So to support this integral leadership philosophy, this holistic leadership idea, I developed the power model. And Naruto Musashi was the father of Japanese sword fencing, samurai sword fencing, and he said it's better to learn one thing that can be applied to many situations, with some slight adjustments and adaptations, of course. So here are a few tools to help leaders and elite teams to operate effectively. These models and tools are designed to empower your team and leaders. They promote integral thinking, flow, peak performance states, and mindfulness. And all these things now at the moment, are all of which have been hot topics in organisational and behavioural research recently. So there's not enough time to go through an awful lot to describe the POWER model in depth, but here we can see it as a strategic model. The team can build a POWER profile for their own organisation and themselves. It provides clarity and a sense of ownership when the team spend time developing their own POWER profile. So as you can see, there's the mission. Every system's going somewhere. So what's the mission? That's, that needs to be worthwhile, inspiring, stretching, and evolving. There's a purpose, the big why. Simon Sinek talks about the big why. The overview is like the vision, but more than that, because it's what you see, feel, and hear when you have that perfect day. When you get to know, when you get to what's the wisdom. Google have 10 of these, such as, you don't need to wear a tie to do serious work. Was one of them. But it's a good idea to create your own rules and the standards that you want. And the ecology check is, how you're going to relate to people. Hopefully you want to be connected and collaborative. And of course, the route forward is the path. How you're going to get there. So that's your SOPs, your processes, your kind of strategy for moving forward. Your performance goals and achievement goals on the way objectives. Here it is for POWER goals as well. So, what your objectives are, what is the optimal strategy, what's the optimal choice, what's the optimal decision here to make. Then again, the ecology check, is this strategy going to interfere with people? Do you need support with that? Check the ecology, how's it going to affect everyone else on the team or the business? Is it aligned with your values? And then, of course, the results that you're actually looking for. You always start with a purpose, obviously, the reason why, because that's the most inspiring thing about it. And this is where I believe most decision making suffers from problems in terms of bias. They don't have an ecology check. They do not take into account the effects decisions have on people, nature, relationships, and culture. So there's this resistance, or it's just unsustainable. So the POWER model can be used as a meetings template. We talked about mission, power, strategic. It could be used in coaching. So in coaching, it would be right. Well, if two team members get together, what's the purpose of this coaching meeting? Okay, what are your options? Which option is the best? The ecology check. Okay, what support do you need? How's that option going to achieve people, affect people? Sorry. And then, okay, well, what's your route forward? What results are you going to go for? What's the strategy going forward? And you can use it in meetings. As I said, the gift will give you, if you want to know more about this, there's a manual, POWER meetings manual. By all means, send an email to info@Metrics Leadership, and we'll send you that for gift for listening to this webinar. As I said, you can use it as an innovation tool. You can use it in decision making. So this is where elite teams are able to make a decision on the ground. The person can then decide, I've seen an opportunity here. He would then decide on what his strategy would be, what his options are, what his wisdom is behind doing this, and then go to every other member who was affected by this possible decision. And in doing so, he's then cleared it. Other people say, no, that's a problem for me. Yes, yeah, that's fine. If everyone says it's okay, then he's empowered then to be able to make that decision. He or she's empowered to make that decision. And power huddles in the morning, I quite often get teams to do this so that they come together and get clear on their own strategy for the day or the week and see how they're getting. And there's that impact, so they can come back each day and go through the process to find out how they're achieving, how they're moving forward and progressing. So it was rushed and sorry I was late. There's some technical difficulties there, but thanks for listening, and ask me any questions. By all means, join me on these. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Metrics Leadership. Send us an email if you'd like the manual. Feel free to get one of those. So that's all from me.
Thank you very much. And folks, we are now open for question and answers. So if you have any questions, you could either put it in the question box or you could equally raise your hand. There's a hand icon available on the webinar console, so please click on it if you want to talk to Mr. Murphy. So let me go to the question box. There are a couple of questions already posted. There's one. Mr. Murphy, where do you see the future of team development?
The future of team development, as technology makes the need for big teams. If you look at companies like Uber and that have so many taxis, and there's very few people actually working at Uber, or a lot less if you look at Airbnb. The future of team development is very much about operating more effectively as close, smaller, more streamlined and high performance teams. I think it's the next competitive advantage. Obviously technology is leading the pace at the moment, but I think we're getting to a zenith with that, with the concept of artificial intelligence. Obviously there's going to be more stuff coming forward, but then we're going to balance that then, I think, and it's then going to be about peak performance, working small teams. And peak performance, individual peak performance rises in smaller teams. In bigger teams, you suffer from what we call the Ringelmann effect, which is this bystander thing, that the more people that are involved, the less productive, the less commitment people have to sorting problems out themselves. So yeah, I think it's going to be the future of business, and the future of team development is all about how can we operate in smaller teams, and how can we get into that fractal design kind of thing, which is what nature does anyway. It's not point trying to improve on what's been going on. Fractal design has been going on for billions of years, and it seems to do it really, really well.
Thank you very much. Another quick one. Yeah. What is the most important skill elite teams need to learn?
It's been found that social intelligence is a high predictor of peak performance in elite teams. And so this social intelligence is the idea of being able to read other people's emotions, being empathic. It's really the facilitators kind of learning to be more facilitative in relationships. Researchers pointed to the fact that the higher number of females in an organization or in a team tends to raises the collective intelligence of a team. And so, we men can learn a little bit from women's ability to be empathic, if you like. But yeah, social intelligence leads to higher collective intelligence and creativity in teams, which I think in a fast-moving world is obviously something that's quite transformational, is the ability to be creative and get on with each other, basically.
Thank you very much. There's another one from Mr. Ali Al-Nashdi. How can I deal with a productive and good employee, but with a bad attitude towards his line manager?
How can you? I think coaching is probably the way forward. That and teaching both. You've got to deal with both sides of the equation. If he's got a bad attitude towards his, I think you need to coach the individuals on both sides to find out what the resistance is. Whenever there's a kind of resistance of any kind, it's because there's an unmet need by the person that's doing the resistant type behaviour. And so you really have to find out what need is not being met, what need is not being met by the line manager with that person. So finding that out would be a good thing. I think coaching would be the obvious example there, to find out what unmet need is there.
Okay, and what is the maximum number of people a team can hold and still be effective?
Okay, well, I think the biggest teams that you get in sport are Australian football. They have, I think, 18 people in a team, and that was reduced from 20 because in 1925, in the history of it, in 1925, they dropped the number from 20 to 18. But you see, even in bigger teams like that, you've got quite a lot of coaches, like Australian football, rugby teams. They'll have quite a few coaches to cope with that. Really, as I said before, the best productive size is about 4, 5, or 6, and this comes from the fact that, especially with clients that I've met, whenever they get to anything like 12 or something like that, there's like this kind of like weird number when you get from 12 people to 13, where the manager or leader or entrepreneur can't really think about that. They've really got to separate that number up. And clients have done that. They found that, I explained this to them. They said, yeah, they've acknowledged that by saying that, yeah, whenever I get to 12, I can never think about it. It gets too complicated. And so I always split up the teams when they get past 12. So what you've got then basically is no more than 12. The peak performance points to sort of, the research points towards, 6 being 4, 5, and 6 being the optimum number. And that's what you get in special forces teams. They tend to be smaller teams. And you've got the beauty of them, as I say, you've been able to bring smaller teams together to work on bigger projects as necessary, but then they go back. And this creates this psychological safety within the team as well. That's very important factor in high performance teams.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. That really brings us towards the end of the webinar. Any concluding remarks that you'd like to give quickly before we dismiss out?
Thank you very much. Again, apologies for being late. But as I say, if you go to Info and Metrics Leadership, I'll send you a manual, and there's a lot more in-depth information about the Power Meeting system and some of the information that we covered here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, and I really want to thank you on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for taking the time to deliver this webinar with us. So thank you very much once again, and thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. Please stay tuned to webinar.mile.org to learn more about our upcoming webinars, programs, and equally to access the recorded versions. With that note, we'd like to end and conclude. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you very much.